Hello, welcome back to the studio with us. In the series of The Law of Karma, Destiny and Choice, today we will be taking up the subject of evil, and is there such a force, and if so, how to handle it. I can think of no one better than to go through this rather interesting exercise with us than Sister Denise, she who possesses spiritual intelligence and a wealth of wisdom. Sister Denise, welcome.
Thank you.
So this is a question that has plagued many for centuries. Is there a dark force? Is there the hand of evil that is over mankind? And I think this question is quite legitimate because we have witnessed for the past few centuries in human history so much of what can only be called evil.
Yeah, I would say that definitely there is such a thing as the dark force. I've met it, I've seen it, I've had to face it down every so often. So, yep, definitely there is. But it's not something you have to be afraid of.
I have to ask you this, is evil something or someone?
The way I look at it is it's an energy. Just as negative karma can be considered to be an energy, and it's, you could say, the force of evil is the accumulated negative karma of every human being on earth. That's a big force, and it's very dark. It's comparable, I think, to a swarm, like a swarm of locusts or a swarm of bees or a swarm of mosquitoes. An individual one is very small, but the swarm itself acts like an organism by itself. And so this dark force is definitely there, it's definitely an energy, and it's something people are very afraid of and very superstitious about. But there are times when you hear God saying that my strength and the strength of the force of evil is equal. Who makes a difference is you. Because God plus one is more powerful than the force of evil minus one. So it's entirely up to the self. You want to be on the side of God or you want to be on the side of negativity. And if you call it negativity, it's less extreme than evil, but it's the same thing.
I look at the world's religions, and if one looks at Christianity, the word Satan comes up often. The name Satan, the word Satan. And within Hindu culture, the word Ravan comes up. Those are depictions of the dark side, the dark force, are they not?
Yeah, this is a personification of a force. A personification is because people have this way of personifying something intangible so that they can focus on it or target it or whatever. But it doesn't mean that it's it. But what happens when you look at, the occult and all this voodoo and things like that, right? You collect energy and you focus it on something, and you can actually turn it against people. This is the dark arts, If you're afraid of it, it has a lot of power over you. If you're with God, it doesn't have any power over you. Exorcism is something that is done. I was meeting with some quite high-level priests in the Vatican not very long ago, Jesuits, and they said, oh yeah, we know how to do exorcism, how about you? I said, well, that's not what I do, but I understand it very well, yeah. But it's definitely part of ancient Christianity. It's definitely part of the culture of Africa, where you're dealing with spirits, good ones, evil ones, whatever, because there is the reality of departed spirits who are just wandering around and giving people trouble because they have so much negative karma that they can't reincarnate. It just is up to us. What is our relationship with it? Now, people who are very superstitious they can easily be manipulated by that or by somebody who controls that because they're so fear-based, you see. But if you are very well-grounded and you have a good solid connection with God and you have a long history of pure karma, what's the problem? You have power, and those things don't have power over you. You become immune to that stuff. There are things going on in the world right now. There are wars going on. There are large cartels of people who do damage, serious damage to a lot of people. There are organized crime organizations. There are people who torture and torment and so on and so forth. And so they are adding fuel to this dark energy. But ultimately, in the mythological war between the forces of good and evil, the force of good always wins. The force of light is always more powerful than darkness, because darkness means the absence of light. So light is something, and darkness is the absence of something, so it's always going to be weak.
Do human beings become forces of evil, just as there are those who are said to be forces of light and God's power?
I think most definitely, if you want to align yourself with that, you can go for it. There are plenty of stories about it, and there are plenty of people having experiences of those who, as it were, you sell your soul to the devil. It means you align yourself with a negative spirit, and why you would do that is for personal gain. As in the story of Faust. Do you know the story of Faust?
No, tell us.
The famous version of it was written by Marlowe in the 16th century. He was a contemporary of Shakespeare. And this man sells his soul to the devil in exchange for wealth and power and whatnot and so forth. And then the devil comes to him to take his life. And of course he's scared to death, and it ends up really very badly. But again, it's a matter of the personification. And you'll see in religious iconography, you see the devil, you've got Dante's Inferno with the devil is sort of underneath some ice and horns and a tail and all sorts of things like this. These are images that people have conjured up to make other people afraid. You don't have to be taken in by that stuff, but you do have to understand that it's real, and that you don't have to be afraid of it, but you do have to be connected with God. There are times when, you know, some negative spirit may come along and try and possess you. This happens. And when anything like that happens, in case it happens, you just immediately call on God and that thing disappears instantly. But you have to be quick.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because my next question is going to be, if one is aware of the dark force that's near you, about to harm you, what protective measures can one take? You said call upon God. You need to specify, because there's somebody watching you right now taking notes.
Yeah, I think one very good protection is your innocence, your purity. Very good protection.
Yeah, there aren't many who have the privilege of being that, not in the year 2019.
Okay.
So give us more details.
Well, it's very important to have a connection with God, because there's so many challenges, and this is just one more challenge. And if you have a connection with God, you can connect with the Supreme Being in soul consciousness and just call upon God. I need you right here, right now. Boom, you know, and He will come, because it's urgent.
What precautions can one take to ensure that you always remain safe from evil?
I do not think that you can guarantee that you're always safe from anything. I think you have to be always vigilant. In some ways, life has been compared to a battle. And you're on the battlefield, and you can be attacked by anything from any direction. And if you are attentive Sometimes the person who is practicing spirituality can be called a spiritual warrior. You are, in a sense, at war with that negative force because you have chosen to be on the side of God. That means the other side is going to say, let me see. But when you're on the side of God, God will say, well, you belong to me. What's the problem? I'm the powerful one. As long as you plus God, it's always going to be more powerful than the force of evil in whatever form, minus one.
There are individuals who pretend to be good and all things good, but meanwhile, deep down inside, there is something else going on, or actually on the side of evil. How does one recognize such diabolical people? Point number one. And question number two is, how do you protect yourself from such individuals?
I will go back to the power of innocence and the power of purity, because when you're spiritually connected, you're also very sensitive and you can detect it quite quickly, and the vibration is there. It's not pure. And there's a negative cast over that person, and they cannot fool you. If you're like that too, maybe they can fool you. So I think to really intensify your purity and reacquire your lost innocence is a very powerful tool in this process. Your generosity, your stepping always in the path of light, your dedication to make the world a good place, all of these things, they all add up to a force, which is no small thing. As I said before, light is something, darkness is the lack of. So all you need is to fill yourself with light, and then you're always going to be something in comparison with a deep, dark nothing. But people are afraid of the big black hole or the abyss or something like this. In Buddhism, they tell you that you must be able to go into the abyss fearlessly, because you are challenging very visceral, deep, reptilian kind of fears that people have. And the fear of death is a big one. And the force of evil is always threatening you with death, you know. But if you know that you're an eternal soul, there's no such thing as death. This is why spiritual study, spiritual practice, spiritual development is going to empower you more and more and more, day by day. If you're studying, you're going to get exams, and the purpose of exams is so you pass, so you get to the next level. So this is another kind of exam.
Does engaging in a spiritual practice protect you from the force of evil? Does it afford the spiritual practitioner some form of immunity or not?
It's not like an insurance policy, but you're developing a skill set. You can compare it with a sport.
Pause. I thought it was some sort of insurance policy. You're bursting my bubble here, Sister Denise.
Sorry.
Yeah, because if your spiritual practice, not your payment of insurance premiums and protection, the policy, a comprehensive spiritual policy that covers you?
Well,
excess payable?
I don't know if when you're a very high quality warrior going to war, you can be insured against all sorts of things, but you still have to go fight the battle all by yourself.
I accept that, yes.
So it's like that.
So what is your answer to the rest of my question?
Your spiritual practice will ensure that you are as skilled as possible, and that you have all the necessary weapons and the skill set and the speed. A warrior has to be very fast, vigilant, quick in, quick out, and unafraid.
I have friends from various religions who, because of their own religious practice, are fully convinced that they enjoy God's protection. And because I know them personally, well, from the time I met them, no actual harm has befallen them or their loved ones. Does God protect human souls who fully give themselves to Him with a very sincere heart? Because the one friend I'm thinking of specifically is very sincere in her religious practice.
Yeah, I think that there is great power in your faith in God, and God definitely gives the reward of your pure karma, your sincerity, your faith, all of these things. There is definitely God's protection, and it is a return for your relationship with God. But God is also your teacher, and He wants to see how you do in the exams. He's looking for those who are really, really skilled. If you can play, really well and be the instrument to take out the force of darkness, that gives you a lot of credit in the eyes of God. I mean, He doesn't want to do your work for you.
And what is our work in this context?
Our work is to achieve excellence and competence in spiritual warriorship. Your students, your warriors, your yogis, many things.
Spirituality is not a walk in the park, is it?
Not a bowl of cherries? Well, it can be, but mostly not.
Yeah, again, she says that with a smile. What comes to mind next is an expression that's often used within the Brahma Kumaris, that the 5 vices are evil spirits.
Mm-hmm.
This has come up quite a lot in your teachings, has it not? How does the 5 evil spirits, which quite obviously to me is present in every single human being, I just want to go through the 5 evil spirits with you. It's greed, ego, attachment, lust, and anger. This is similar to what is contained in Christianity as the 7 deadly sins. Those 2 groups intersect. How does that fit into what you just said?
An evil spirit, that means a soul who's left the body, who couldn't reincarnate because of their negative karma, and they go around doing bad things. And the kind of bad things that they do are out of attachment, out of greed, out of anger, out of ego, out of lust. So these like to take possession of people and make them do things that they ordinarily wouldn't do. So they are classified as evil spirits because they function like a spirit who wants to take possession of someone. Sometimes in India, people think I'm a very good person and I got taken by the evil spirit of anger. I had no control. I'm not responsible. Actually, what you need to do is take responsibility. This is my anger, and I did this thing. I lost control because I'm weak, and I wasn't possessed by any evil spirit, but I behaved like that, and I have to acknowledge it and take care of this situation by overcoming my weakness, by getting spiritually competent. And many of the people in India who study these things are by nature very superstitious. They've grown up on stories of spirits and whatnot and so forth, so it is something that they can relate to. And so it is there in the teachings because people can understand it. But if you are a sort of grounded, scientific, materialistic type of person who doesn't believe in evil spirits, you don't need that particular description or analogy, because it is very simply the force of your weakness that takes you over, and under that compulsion you do negative action, and then you are adding to the force of darkness. And if you are in spiritual practice, this force which is in you will attack you very powerfully and try and take you down, and you have to resist that. It's a war. It's an internal war, external war.
In earlier episodes, you mentioned the term body consciousness and soul consciousness. How does that fit in to the subject at hand today, the force of evil? Does one consciousness invite evil and one consciousness deflect it?
Exactly. When you're body conscious, you're materialistic, you're totally caught up in sense perception, desires, gratification. If you don't get what you want, you get crazy about it. You're completely under the influence of external perception, and you have no control over yourself. You're weak, you have no will, and you're just a big bag of uncontrollable emotions. That's body consciousness, and you're putty in the hands of the dark force, you can say.
Okay, and soul consciousness assists you how?
Soul consciousness, you're connected with your real self, you're connected with God, you're in your power, and the dark force is, is other. It can't get in.
Okay, so it's there, but it can't touch you.
Well, it can't come along and attack you, you destroy it.
Because of your own personal power.
Because you see it for what it is. It's nothing.
That's interesting. So evil is nothing in reality?
You know, there is this word Maya, right? Maya, which means illusion. Mm-hmm. It also means that which is not there.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing. It's a paper tiger.
Yeah, except that it plagues the whole world. It
because,
or he or
because
she
they
plagues.
buy into it. And because they consider it to be real. Face it, consider it to be nothing, know it to be nothing. Be in your dimension of light, and, if you bring light into a dark room, where's the darkness? It doesn't exist. Light is something. Darkness is nothing. You have to know that. But you have to go through the motions. You have to face it down and take it out. That's the game.
That's the game. When facing evil, most people experience fear.
That's the killer.
Yeah. Tell us how not to die then.
Well, you have to die in advance, then you're immortal.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
When you know that you're indestructible and invincible because you have lived as a spiritual being in a physical body, and you have faced many different types of, death of the ego is the key here. An ego death is equivalent to a death. And you see how you survive all of these deaths and assassinations and whatnot. You realize it is nothing. And eventually you have actual death where you leave your body. Your body is a shell, you leave it. And you have to handle pain, and you have to handle loss. And if you practice well, you can do it. It's been done, it can be done. This is called victory over matter and Maya. In Christianity, they call it victory over sin and death. This is what this crucifixion of Christ was all about.
Say more about that.
It is said, he conquered sin and death.
That's a beautiful description of Christ. I've never heard that before.
It's part of Christianity tenets.
Really, that's lovely. Okay, so evil. Stay away from it. Bad.
Well, make it stay away from you. It's just darkness. Put the light on.
Put the light on. Yes. On that note, we have to switch off the light on today's episode. Very riveting subject, Sister Denise, and I smile at the casual way in which you have taken up such a heavy subject. This is heavy. So thank you for what you shared today, and I hope that you have given the audience at home the same food for thought that you've given me. So evil is an energy that we are able to overcome and conquer, and I liked your message that one should not be afraid of it, because that's just making the problem worse. So thank you for what you shared today. So thank you so much for joining us, and I do hope to see you again for the next episode, and I hope you've really been taking benefit from this series of Karma, Destiny and Choice. Take care and goodbye.